All right, we're live. Live chat number 27. How's everyone doing out there? Sorry for the delay, everybody. We are waiting for Alexander Mercouris. We don't know where Alexander is. he's having connection problems, and he's trying to jump on, but hopefully he'll get on real soon. But I am here with the one, the only, Mr. Peter Lavelle in Moscow. Peter, live chat number 27. How are you doing in Moscow? It's cold outside, but it's warm inside everywhere you go.
Oh, no, it's wet outside. It's really wet. This spring, I think, is going to make an early debut. Okay, we had a horrifically cold weekend, and now, that's the worst part of winter in Russia, when it gets warm, because that's when everything melts. And then if there's a freeze at night, everything's an ice skating rink in the morning. So that's the downside of winter. It's not cold, everyone. It's not snow. It's when it starts warming up. That's when winter is a hardship.
Right. I hear you.
And it's a boon for dry cleaners, okay? Because all your stuff gets dirty.
Yeah, I remember it well. You walk inside somewhere and it's like 40 degrees Celsius.
And you break into a sweat.
You break into a sweat going down to the metro. Anyway, guys, can everyone hear me all right on the live chat? Let me know. Hello from Mongolia. Hello from Virginia, from Holland, from Switzerland, from Southeast England. Hello, everybody. Someone said, what is Drow 7 said, if only you had an oracle to find the oracle. Yeah.
No, he's out there somewhere.
He's somewhere out there. We need an oracle to find the oracle. I agree with that. All right. We hope everyone is doing well this Monday. From Indiana, Sweden, Texas, Denmark, Somalia, Thailand, Melbourne, Australia. Hello from the UK. From North Carolina. Hello, everybody. How is everyone doing? Good afternoon from Germany. All right. From China. Good to have you here. From Zagreb. San Fran. Richard, how are you? From San Fran. Hello, Rosebud. How are you doing? Grace from North Carolina. All right. Propaganda detection. Cool handle. From Brooklyn. Okay, let's get into it. We have a lot of questions. We have a lot of super chats as well that were sent before the show. And we have a lot to cover. And hopefully, like we said, hopefully Alexander will get on sooner or later and his connection problems will be solved. Peter, me and you. Peter's going to do a lot of heavy lifting until Alexander gets on board. How are you feeling, Peter?
I'm not overwhelmed by the thought of this. Okay. All
right. Let's start it off with let's see. Let's start off with an interesting one from Catherine. Just heard the Putin speech. Amazing. I have a question for Peter. A few years ago, the truckers in Moscow were pissed. I think they were getting charged a high toll. How did that get sorted out?
I don't know anything about a toll, okay, at all. I'm sorry, it kind of caught me flat-footed on that one.
Really?
No,
did you remember something about the truckers?
Well, no, I do remember. I think it was Masha Gessen that said that the truckers should blockade Moscow and force regime change. I mean, another, this fantasy craziness, there's this Putin derangement syndrome, that they should starve them out, Muscovites out, okay? Which, of course, there's a lot of Muscovites that don't like the current political arrangement. Most of the liberals in Russia are in Moscow, okay? So why would they do that? But they come up with these fantasy ideas. It's really quite silly, okay? I think we have Alexander Mercouris.
He's trying to get on. I see a blue, blue figure.
So there's no tolling system that I'm aware of to get into Moscow. There's no barrier to free trade within the country.
And Masha Gessen is a Russophobe to the highest degree.
Rabid, yeah.
Yeah. All right. From look at this handle, toilet sauce. All right, interesting handle, but it's a question that you've answered many times. But let's get it out of the way. Once again, we speculate about Putin's successor. What do you think about Alexei Duman?
It's so hard to say at this point here. Look, I think that it's very fair to say the successor to Vladimir Putin when he leaves office will be someone very much like Vladimir Putin, meaning carrying on the fundamental policies that he's adhered to for his time in high politics, and that is basically reform of the country and protection of the country's sovereignty. Those are the two fundamental issues that really define Putin's time in high politics, and they're genuinely popular. We went through pension reform a few months ago, which is everybody's nightmare. No politician likes to do it. Putin could have kicked the can down the road like most people do, but he decided he had enough political capital. This is public opinion ratings was in the mid 80s. He took on pension reform and he found himself in the high 60s. Still, any Western leader would love to have those numbers, but he knew that pension reform had to be done. And it's going to be that kind of person that will follow him that will have to, they're tough questions here. I mean, Russia's demographic situation has improved dramatically since the 1990s, but because of the natural, the aging of this demographic, Russia also will be facing the same issues as Western Europe about demographics in the workforce, and you'll have retirees, and that's why they were talking about pension reform, because the pensions that were inherited from the Soviet Union, well, they were assumed on a very a fixed price rate where there would be no inflation. Well, you know, Russia has been a non-communist country now for almost 30 years, and so it has a mixed economy, and for many years it had problems with inflation. So there's some really serious domestic issues that have to be addressed, and it has a lot to do with pensions moving forward. I mean, you know, there's a store downstairs in my building. It's called Dixie. It's for low-income people, and there's a lot of low-income people in Moscow, and they as the equivalent of counting their pennies, they count their kopecks, and I see it every day, and it really is painful, because this is the generation that rebuilt the Soviet Union after the Second World War, and what are they getting? You know, they have a hard time living. They still do.
Yeah, I remember going to Dixie. It's yeah, you see that they have a lot of bargain shops all over Moscow. Yeah. All right, from Law is Truth. Thanks, Team Duran. Learned and shared your information widely. Thank you, Law is Truth. Guys, share the channel, smash that like button, go to the Duran shop, pick up a t-shirt. We really appreciate all the help you guys give us, and we'll get to the super chats very soon.
And if anyone knows where Alexander Mercouris is, please tell us.
Yeah, and there's a bounty to find Alexander Mercouris.
3 t-shirts.
free t-shirt. Whoever finds Alexander gets a free t-shirt. All right. This is a topic, Peter, that I know you like to discuss because it's not widely reported in the news. And Law is Truth said, I recently watched the House of Lords debate on Yemen, and they sound very genuine, discussing devastation. What's going on with Yemen? What's the update with Yemen? Do you know? Because it's not discussed at all.
Well, you know, it took the assassination of the Saudi insider / Washington Post journalist Khashoggi to really shine light on Yemen. I've been doing it for years now on Crosstalk because I think I have a moral obligation. I think the more you learn about, if you have any curiosity at all of what's going on in Yemen, you have to have pangs of conscience. I mean, it is really horrific. I mean, we're going to do a program on Crosstalk tomorrow on Venezuela, and the media is talking about the humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. Oh my God, you can't buy toothpaste, or there's plenty of toothpaste there, but you can't buy toothpaste in Yemen, okay? And you don't get that kind of media coverage about the. I mean, I think it was a 60 Minutes was well over a year ago. They did a report on Yemen, but they hardly mentioned at all the U.S. involvement in being culpable with the Saudis and destroying that country. Genuine humanitarian crisis on the verge of genocide. So I mean, the problem is that, you know. You have there's so much Saudi money in the UK, in the city, in the American markets. They can flash a lot of money around. They fund all of these think tanks. They don't. I mean, they're junk reports. They're throwaway reports. They try to be serious, but they're all paid. And there's and those people have a lot of influence on politicians. And then you have arms sales. You know, the Saudis buy upmarket real estate, very, very expensive upmarket luxuries. And, these people don't want to annoy the Saudis, okay? And they have a lot of clout. I mean, Bob Dylan said it, he said, money doesn't talk, it screams, okay? And we basically see the caliber of politicians today. They have no conscience. They have no moral substance to them. I mean, look at them. Most of them are just completely bland. And then some of them are like AOC, just entertain us, okay? I mean, for me, it keeps me busy on Crosstalk watching this whole class of buffoons and idiots, okay? And when you and it's so easy to learn what's going on in Yemen. And if you can't get politics, I mean, I hate to say it, but that may be the first veto of Trump's entire presidency, is to veto a joint resolution of Congress for the United States to withdraw its support of that war. And it's because the Defense Department, they want their deals. And these are deals that were signed during the Obama administration. I'm not picking on just Trump and the Republicans. I mean, this is a bipartisan cabal, okay? And it's about greed, the revolving door with politics in the war industry. So there's a lot of things that allow you to put a blindfold to just the worst humanitarian crisis that is happening in the world right now. But these people, they're too enamored with their power, with their wealth, and their prestige, okay? And it's absolutely disgusting.
Yeah, they're preoccupied with regime change in Venezuela. MBS was in China striking a lot of deals. So, I mean, the Khashoggi thing, no one talks about it at all.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's too inconvenient.
Yeah, exactly. Valley Skippy. Where's Skippy?
Well, he's such a troublemaker. He's in a mock fight with one of my dachshunds, okay? And they're having a really great time. And so let them do that, okay, while we talk.
All right. Fred Elliott, thank you for your super chat. Always look forward to your show. Thank you, Fred. From Beatrix, since Breadline Bernie has flipped, what model might Trump follow on Venezuela, Obama's model of arming the resistance and starting a civil war, or Bush's model of direct military action? And how will the Lima Group be a part? Peter, Bernie Sanders took the side of humanitarian aid. He did it in a tweet. A lot of people did come down hard on him.
They should.
For that tweet, as they should. We had Sir Richard Branson giving a live aid. Venezuela
my favorite word is going to be buffoon. Okay, what a buffoon. Roger Waters at least came out, did the right thing. It was a very powerful video. I shared it on Facebook. Yeah. I usually, because I hope we don't talk about the Oscars here, because I just don't like identitarian politics and culture. But I'm really glad that Roger Waters came out and said, just because you're in show business, because you have a high profile and you can flash money around, doesn't mean that your myopic, closed-minded, uninformed opinion should count for much. You see the Washington Post backtrack and then later delete, the crowd size of that concert.
200,000 people, and now it's estimated. Mood of Alabama did a really good analysis. They said it was
best
somewhere around 20,000
at best, and they were generous. They were generous.
Yeah, okay. Good on Roger Waters. Roger Waters also called out the white helmets as well. So good on Roger Waters for that.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. Let me go back.
Let's go to the question. What model do you think is going to happen now in Venezuela, given all this humanitarian aid stuff that's going on the border and trucks being put ablaze and God knows what else is being reported, if it's even true?
Well, I think that from some of the reporting I've seen from RT and others, it looks like the burnt convoy trucks was on the Colombian side, and they did it to the trucks themselves for dramatic effect. Okay, so this is an information war. What model? I don't really think in terms of models, but I think it's an interesting question. And I've told you, I think we said this on Crosstalk yesterday when you were a guest. My sense is that Trump is going to want to. Trump has no problem threatening military intervention. I think he feels very happy about doing that. I don't think he wants to go that far in reality, because I think he wants to be able to keep his campaign promise. Now, in his mind, and and I'm sure that the Abrams and the Boltons and the Pompeos are egging Trump on by saying, well, this isn't like the Middle East. This is different than the Middle East, okay? Which, of course, it isn't, okay? What I think is going to happen is that there will be the threat of a military intervention, and then short of that, if this random guy Guaido doesn't get traction, and he hasn't gained any traction here at all. The moment of the moment where he could have done it has been passed. Okay, because if he hasn't caught on now, he's probably not going to catch on now, and we will be looking at the different cracks within the opposition itself because he's an upstart. There are a lot of other people who said, "Hey, it should have been me. It should have been," which of course is part and parcel of the opposition in Venezuela. It's like the opposition in Russia; they're all full of egos. It's me, 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 me. It's a lot less about policy. Okay, so random guy got chosen. Not everybody is happy with that. So let me finish with this: what will they do short of a military intervention? Start a civil war.
Jeez.
Yes.
Horrible.
Yes. Oh, it is horrible.
Horrible.
Okay, yeah. Because as we pointed out yesterday, and I encourage everyone to watch the program, it's on YouTube right now. What Western media won't talk about, and I don't care if it's from CNN, MSNBC to Fox, okay, because I don't like any of their reporting on this, okay. But there's no recognition in the mainstream media that under Chavez, millions and millions of people were brought out of poverty. I mean, what the economic problems that Venezuela has today is a small beer compared to what they had before when they were completely disenfranchised. You had a grossly stratified society, and Chavez, who I like some of the things he did and some things he didn't do. I'm not here to cheerlead for Chavez. What I am here to cheerlead is people that got into the process, and there are many people that benefited from that. If they are told they're going to take it all away from you, there are people who say, I'm signing up because I will fight for this. And that's the deviousness of Elliot Abrams. If he doesn't get what he wants from random guy, he'll just say, set the whole thing on fire. And of course, that'll take the Venezuelan oil off the market. It'll drive the country into chaos. And the Trump administration will have to beg the Saudis and maybe get with some success to help stabilize oil prices as Venezuela burns. The gross cynicism of these people. And I'd like to hand over the baton to Alexander Mercouris, who speaking from an undisclosed location, and I know his wife is involved in this because he probably connected him. Okay. All right.
and joining,
she gets the T-shirt. She gets the T-shirt.
Right. She gets the T-shirt. Joining us from, I don't know. Is he in London? Where is he?
Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Alexander. Welcome.
Major connectivity problems here. I don't know why. It's the usual place. We've had to use a different computer as well. So provided. So apologies if the image is great, but
we hear you well. Your image is fantastic. Welcome, Alexander. How are you doing? How are things in London? The Oracle of London, Mr. Alexander Mercouris.
They're getting very interesting. I mean, obviously, we've got more to talk about later, no doubt, in the program. But all kinds of funny things are happening here.
Let's get rolling then. Let's keep on rolling. And we have a super chat from Borchti the Almighty. Thoughts on channels such as China's Uncensored or Visual Politic EN. Also, any chance of inviting Xavier as a guest on the podcast? Oracle of Paris. Okay, so Borchti, we have the Oracle of Paris. Great. Thank you, Borchti, for your super chat. Peter, do you know these channels? And
no, but Xavier, I think would be a wonder. As a matter of fact, I maybe a kind of a sneak preview to all our viewers here. I don't want to give a lot of details because they're firming up right now. But Xavier is working very closely with some members of the Yellow Vest movement. They have a big event coming up next month. And maybe we can bring him on and have him explain to us what the plan is, what they want to achieve, and then maybe afterwards come and do a post-mortem and tell us what he thinks, because he's a very, very interesting guy. I remember having him on a few months ago, and I said, I prefaced my question. I said, "Well, Xavier, as a European," and he said, "No, I am French." Okay, so he's my man. Okay, he's my man.
Yeah, he is. He'll be a good guest to have on. And Peter, you gave a lot of good hints as to what we might be planning in the future, and we will leave it at that. Alexander, do you know these channels? Visual Politician and
I'm afraid I don't. I've never heard of
China Uncensored. We don't know, but thank you, Borch D. If you can give us more information on these channels, we would love to take a look at them and see what they're broadcasting. Alexander from Buckshot, Trump is any comments on Trump blocking Turkey from getting 2 more F-35s?
Well, as I understand it, at the present moment in time, the whole F-35 delivery supply to Turkey is in serious jeopardy again. It looked as if a few weeks ago the problem was going to be sorted, but it's clear that the Turks are not happy with the Patriot deal that the US offered, and it's also clear that they're going to press ahead with the S-400 buy from Russia. And the result is, it seems that the US is now going to retaliate. And once again, we're back at this story that they're not going to supply the F-35 fighters, which Turkey has paid for. So it looks like we've got a big row coming.
All right. Thank you for that question, Buckshot. And I'll throw another one at you, Alexander. From S. Bennett, what do you think about Blair joining the independent group?
Well, I first of all, I should make a point that at the moment the independent group is not technically even a party. Yeah. It's actually a private company. That sounds very bizarre, but the reason they've done that is because they want to conceal who their donors are. If they were a political party, they would have to publish the names, the identities of their donors. So they have a private company, and of course they're a group of supposedly independent MPs who have come together and formed some sort of incoherent group, which is not yet a party. I have absolutely no doubt that Tony Blair is not only cheerleading this, but that he's involved in it in some way. I'm sure these people have consulted him. Several of them are friends of his or people he knows. And I'm sure he's also spoken to some of the people who are backing this financially. So he can't yet join it because, as I said, there is no party for him to join. But I have no doubt that he is deeply involved.
Okay. Thank you, Alexander. Thank you, Valias.
Why does he just go away? Okay. Okay. Really, just go. I mean, okay. If you want to come into public life, this is the deal I make. I make with Tony Blair. You stand trial for war crimes. And if you're cleared, then you can come back. Okay. But you have to finish what you started. And he walked away from it and he got away scot-free. He doesn't, people like that don't belong in public life anymore. He should be banned and banished, like Elliot Abrams, banished.
Well, indeed, Peter.
I'm very angry about this, okay? Where's the moral integrity in British society? Where is it? Well, my God, it's disgusting again.
Yeah. Well, Tony Blair is a discredited figure for most people. He won't let go. His successor, Gordon Brown, and David Cameron are not playing an active role in British politics. David Cameron, in fact, tried to persuade the three Tories not to join the independent group. But Tony Blair is completely different, and he makes his own rules. All I will say is that any obvious open connection between this group and Blair would be toxic for them. So if you want this group to fail, then identify them publicly with Blair and you guarantee it.
Valias, thank you for your super chat. We appreciate it. And Peter, what do you make of Rubio's veiled Maduro threat using Gaddafi image? A super chat from Ann Altus. What do you think of what Rubio, little Marco Rubio?
Little Marco Rubio from Florida. Okay. What do I make of it? Well, it's a standard fare from people of very limited intelligence and grand political ambitions. Okay. I mean, look, he is in the pocket of so many lobbyist groups, okay? He'll always be batting 1,000 for Israel, and then he's got the Cubans, and he gets all these right-wing, white ringers in Latin America, You know, they all have deep money, corrupt, and they want to curry favor with the most extreme elements of regime change elites in America. So what do I think of Marco Rubio? Well, when I first heard of him, I thought that was a new color of a crayon. Okay, he doesn't mean anything to me. He's a spokesperson for illegality, for gangsterism, and just the crushing of civil society. I mean, I am put into a very uncomfortable situation when it comes to the Venezuela crisis, because I'm not a big proponent of socialism, okay, of any variant, all right? But what it seems to me, and looking at what has happened in Venezuela for the last few decades, people have been allowed into they've been enfranchised. They have made decisions to vote. They have voted certain ways. We should respect that. But at the same time, we can call out the mistakes of Chavez and his government and his successor. But it doesn't mean you invalidate it. You make it null and void. That is for the Venezuelan people to decide. It's not up to Elliot Abrams to make sure random guy gets power in Venezuela. What? This is the 64th coup d'etat, intervention in elections in Latin America by the United States. And I can't think of one time it actually worked out well. You can't tell me, well, this time it's going to be different. It ain't going to be different. It's always going to be the same. When you have outside intervention and outside forces determining political facts on the ground, it ends up being a disaster for the people on the ground.
Yeah. Can I just add something to this? Because, of course, Gaddafi, whose fate Rubio seems to be willing now upon Maduro, was publicly and brutally tortured to death in the most hideous fashion.
He was sodomized, Alexander. Don't beat around the. He was sodomized. It was caught on video. It was caught on video for the world to see. And Hillary Clinton, the witch that she is, was cackling about it. She was bragging about it.
We saw he died.
Exactly.
Exactly.
We shouldn't forget this.
Now, for Marco Rubio to will that, or for anybody to will that upon any human being, is disgusting. It is utterly depraved.
Moral bankruptcy.
It is morally, it's beyond bankrupt. It's hideous. And if Marco Rubio is that kind of a person, that he makes that kind of threat against people, then all I can say for him is that, well, I really don't want to know anything about this man. He is terrible. I mean, I was really deeply shocked by that tweet, and I am stunned that the reaction has been less strong than I think it should have been.
All I can say to Marco Rubio, that's bad karma, man.
Yeah.
You'll regret it. That's bad karma.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, this is a senator of the United States of America, and he's making idiotic comments like that. It's just crazy. It's just crazy. A 5-year-old wouldn't make comments like that.
No.
Yeah, but you guys, let's, I think I know why he said such a thing. He's looking for favor among some of these really gross right-wing extremists. I mean, where random guy comes from in the political spectrum, his group is accused of domestic terrorism, of setting people on fire, committing arson, all kinds of things. I mean, these people have no limits whatsoever. And Marco Rubio is probably Trump's Trump man in Congress for Latin America because his parents were born under the Castro dictatorship. No, he wasn't born under the Castro dictatorship. It was Batista, America's puppet in Cuba. Okay, he can't even get his family history straight. No, people like Marco Rubio, for calculated political reasons, are pandering to the worst elements of the political spectrum in Latin America. And we all, maybe a lot of our viewers don't know, but I do remember the dirty wars. And Alexander Mercouris, you remember the dirty wars as well. Okay, and they're called dirty for a reason.
Yeah, and I remember when Alex Jones confronted Marco Rubio in Congress a few months ago. Rubio showed what a coward he was. I don't know you. I don't know who you are. Said that to Alex Jones' face. He knew exactly what was going on, but There we saw the true character of Marco Rubio when he's confronted face to face by somebody. Exactly. And Alex Jones called him out on that. Good on Alex Jones when he confronted Rubio. Okay. Let's get to some super chats. Another one from Anne. Alexander, is Netanyahu in real trouble in the Israeli elections?
As far as I understand it, he is. I mean, he's got corruption allegations swirling against him, all kinds of problems now building up. And I think, for one thing, he's been around now for such a long time that a lot of people are tired of him. So yes, I think he is in trouble. But
and they hate his wife. Apparently,
I have to add though that Netanyahu has, on many occasions, made in the past look like he's out and he bobs back. I'm not an expert on Israeli electoral politics. God help me. So I'm not convinced that he's definitely gone. But certainly he's in trouble, and we'll see what happens. If he loses, and there's criminal action taken against him, then I think it'll be very difficult to see even this political Houdini coming back. But who knows?
Well, the thing is that I think there's too much spotlight on personalities here. It's a Likud party is going to be there. Okay, Netanyahu, if Bibi goes, they're still going to be there, and his electoral strategy is to go even further to the right. Okay?
Exactly.
I mean, again, joining up with the extremists and grossly polarizing Israeli society. It's far more. What is so fascinating about Israeli media and Israeli politics is that you actually can say, and sometimes it's really horrible things that are said, but you can publicly say it in Israel. The kind of things that are said in Israeli politics are forbidden to talk about in the legacy media. It's really extraordinary. I mean, Israeli politics is really a blood sport. It's very vicious. It's not politically correct, and they're nasty about it. And American media, British media, glosses over it all of the time. And there's this worship of what the devil and that's Bibi. And the Israeli politics is very, very corrupt, even by these nominal transparency NGOs, I have never understood their methodology, but you would presumably they're sympathetic to Israel, but they even say at the end of the day it's a pretty corrupt place.
Yeah, and those people wishing for if Bibi goes, they think something better is going to happen.
Oh, no.
We have a saying in Greece when it comes to politicians, the successor, the next guy's always worse than the previous guy. That's just a rule of thumb. Peter. Another super chat from Pilgrim Driver. Will they be a new version of the Contras formed to get involved in Venezuela? You mentioned Abrams. You mentioned what he did. Will there be a new kind of Contras thing going on?
I'm sure that's one of the contingencies that is being developed as we speak right now. Absolutely. They brought in Elliot Abrams for a reason. Yeah. Okay, the shock and awe to scare the bejeezers out of people. Like, oh my God, that guy's back. Okay. And number two, he's done it before. So, I mean, he knows what to do. He knows the calls to make. He knows how to launder money. He knows how to get it to them. I mean, this is his shtick. Okay. So the dual purposes, to scare people that, oh my God, Honduras, Guatemala, then is Nicaragua. It's going to happen to us now. And because he has the skill set, if I can use that term, to do it.
Skill set. That's what he does. Absolutely. He's the fixer. He's coming in to do what he knows to do. Indeed. That's why he's there. Alexander, let's go back to the UK and to Brexit. 2 questions for you. The first one is from Dickie Hands.
It's Brexit. No.
That's right. These are good questions. What is the significance of the timing of the independent group split? And Alexander, keep that in mind. And we have a super chat from Chosy. Alexander, a 3-month extension of Brexit is now being touted as a 2-year extension. Any truth to this? That's a super chat.
Yeah, let me take the second question first, because in fact, there is now talk about a 2-year extension, which is, of course, an attempt to kick the ball indefinitely, effectively, because
course,
if we're going to put it back for another 2 years, there isn't going to be a Brexit. I mean, that's the tactic. Now, I have to say, I don't think it's going to happen. And the very latest news is that Theresa May has told Angela Merkel, allegedly, that there is not going to be any Brexit extension at all. In other words, that she's ruling it out. Now we're going to see moves, I think, in the British Parliament to try to force a Brexit extension. I have always been skeptical about whether those moves can succeed if the Prime Minister and the government oppose them, because under the British system, it is quite clear that it is the government which governs, and to try for Parliament to enforce its will on the government on an issue which is essentially part of the government's prerogatives would, I think, be an attempt to create a dual power system in Britain, which to my mind is constitutionally and legally dubious. So if Theresa May sticks to her position, then I don't think there's going to be an extension of any kind. Having said that, we shall see. And that is, of course, where the group, this independent group comes in, because there is no doubt at all, and we've discussed this, Alex and I, on programs, that part of the agenda, about most of the agenda, about setting up this group now in the run-up to Brexit Day, with all these sensitive votes coming up in the House of Commons, is to increase the pressure on Theresa May and on Jeremy Corbyn, the two major party leaders, by telling to Theresa May, if you don't extend Brexit, if you don't delay Brexit, then you're going to, and rule out a no-deal Brexit, you're going to see more and more conservatives defecting to this group. And it's also intended to, as a threat to Jeremy Corbyn, by saying to him, if you don't back a second referendum, you're going to see more and more Labour MPs joining this group. Again, as I've discussed in previous videos with Alex, I don't think this blackmail will succeed, because I don't think either Theresa May or Jeremy Corbyn will be bluffed into believing it, because I think it is largely bluff. The opinion polls backing this group have not been good, and I think they both realise that ultimately in the country there isn't much support for it.
I have a quick question. If I may. Alex, I'm curious, is Theresa May acting and speaking in, does she have goodwill?
No, she doesn't have goodwill. What she's trying to do is she's trying to dial the clock down to the last possible moment. She's again postponed her vote on her deal. This is the same deal that was rejected previously by the British government, by the British Parliament, by a majority of 230. But she's trying to delay the vote on it until the last possible moment, so that she can ram it through by saying to the parliamentarians, if you don't vote for this deal, you get a no-deal Brexit, and that's going to be a catastrophe. So that's what her agenda is. Her agenda is to try to get this deal, which has been rejected, passed. And to be absolutely clear, Peter, it is a terrible deal. If it is voted in, it locks Britain into a customs union with the EU indefinitely, one it cannot leave without the agreement of the European Union. It is a worse position than the one Britain is in now.
All right, guys, we need some theme music, because Nicholas Walters is reminding us that it's time for the Trudeau moment of the week. You promised.
I know I promised. I was so busy today. Well,
he is undergoing a scandal with SNC Javelin, I believe. He's had, I think the equivalent of the attorney of his AG has quit. I'm not sure about that. I'm still looking at the story case. She has quit.
She has quit.
And Trudeau is in deep crap. Alexander, Peter, let's have our Trudeau moment of the week. Justin's in trouble. What's going on?
Well, no matter what he says, he's screwed, okay? And of course, with elections coming up, people are going to make hay of this here. But this is just very much what Trudeau is all about. It's always sleight of hand, smoke and mirrors, a smile. But this, his form of liberalism, it's just he's corrupt. Okay, I mean, and he thinks it's good corruption. I suppose it's good liberal corruption. But I mean, no, I mean, people are spilling the beans around him. All right, and no matter what he says, he's going to be hurt by it. Is it going to be enough to hurt him at the polls? We'll see. I'm still predicting that he'll probably pull through at the very end with a very small, a very slim majority.
You know, this reminds me so much of Tony Blair, because
exactly.
Tony Blair came in, he was going to be this honest, virtue signaling person. I remember him saying that he was a really straight guy.
Cool Britannia.
Exactly, and all this. And very, very quickly, soon after he became Prime Minister, we discovered that he was involved in all kinds of activities, and the British Labour Party under his leadership was involved in all sorts of funny activities with Bernie Ecclestone and Formula One, and that was only the start of it. And of course, people were just incredulous that clean Tony, pure Tony, could possibly be involved in things like that. And it seems to me this is Justin Trudeau all over again. I mean, he is Blair light in Canada. And just as Blair was totally Atlanticist and neoliberal and virtue signaling, so of course is Justin Trudeau. Just to make one thing absolutely clear, the Attorney General has resigned. Apparently there was meddling, it seems, in a league to stop a prosecution of a big construction company. And it seems also that Justin Trudeau's aide, one of his big advisors, has also resigned. And it is likely that he was somehow involved in all of this, though, I mean, we've still got a lot to find out. I would remind people that when the chief financial officer of Huawei was arrested in Canada, there was all this talk in Canada about how now in Canada we do not interfere in the judicial and legal process, and nothing like that could possibly happen in Canada. And I was saying that in extradition cases, especially, politicians are always involved. Well, here we see the proof that in fact in Canada, politicians and the political process does interfere in judicial and legal matters. How much more likely is it that it did in the Huawei case?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, because being an American and having a consciousness of Canada. Canada was always the more virtuous America. It always did things better. It was always a nicer, kinder place, and it had more virtue. But under Trudeau, you see the ugly side, okay, the slimy side, and they all hide behind their virtue signaling. But they're corrupt, and it's becoming evident. Okay, I hope he takes a real big hard fall on this. Okay, because he's a fraud. He's a complete fraud, and I'm glad he's being revealed for what he is.
Yeah, let's not forget Blair came into office, and him and Bill Clinton were really cool. They were buddies, and they were the cool, hip president and the prime minister. And then Blair buddied around with Bush, and he sold the Iraq WMD war to everybody.
And he sold his soul.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I mean, if I may say so, Peter, he was always that way before he became prime minister. I mean, he was always Blair. I remember him very well. I remember him.
Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up! Lock him up!
I never believed in him. I never took him seriously, and I'm very glad to say that in the landslide victory which he won in 1997, I didn't vote for him.
Yeah, the truth always comes out with the politicians. Even Obama came into office, and everyone was like, "Wow, he's so cool." And at the end of the day, he took the U.S. into 7-8 wars and bombed the crap out of everybody. Did a huge drone program. Syria, Libya, you name it. So don't believe any of these guys, even with their virtue signaling. Yeah,
he bailed out Wall Street and let Main Street hang, from the highest lamppost. Yep.
And let's get into the recent regime change again in Venezuela. Peter, a question from Asma in line with the Venezuela crisis. This is a good question. What is it that makes almost all of the South American countries support Guaido? Are they under pressure from the U.S.? Are they being blackmailed? What do you think, Peter, about this, especially with the Lima meeting and the Lima group?
Well, I mean, if you support the U.S. policy, then the U.S. turns a blind eye to all of your insidious behavior. Of course, I mean, you don't have to worry about a human rights report. You don't have to worry about the same things that they're talking about Venezuela, about income inequality. I mean, you just get a free pass. Okay, you get a free pass. Maybe you get special trade benefits, and then the elites are treated. It goes all back to what we talk about in previous programs, as elite capture. You get to sit at the adult table. There's a lot of little perks that go along with it. Absolutely, and this whole Lima group. Okay, you have Freeland, the foreign minister of Canada. Like, she's spearheading this. This is not an American operation; it's a Canadian one, and she's corralled the most right wing, and I say right wing, not conservative. There's a huge difference, and we need to do a separate program on this I don't like the confusion, fusing together right and conservatism, because they're not the same. And as a matter of fact, as time goes on, there are more of a separation. We should do a celebratory program on the great thoughts of Pat Buchanan. Yeah, there's a lot of perks that go along with it, and plus it's all of these right-wing regimes in Latin America. This is a message to their own populist and socialist and leftist oppositions in their own countries, that look, we got, this is what happens to people that support ideas like Chavez, because those kind of ideas threaten all of those governments in Latin America. So it's also telling your domestic opponents, you stay in line, because we got some people up north, okay, and they can fiddle with us, all right? That's it. I mean, again, it's the lack of any moral integrity whatsoever, and it is the willingness to abrogate any kind of responsibility to the sovereign state of your country and the sovereignty of your people. I mean, these are just buffoons and political pygmies. I apologize to pygmies, okay, but this is what they are. Okay, this is exactly what they are. They're just they're a sad excuse for a political meme. That's what they are. All of them.
Can I just add one quick thing, which is, of course, one of the most striking things over the last couple of years is how all these left-wing governments that had existed in Latin America a couple of years ago have gone down, fallen like ninepins. I mean, they have in Brazil, in Argentina, in Ecuador, in all sorts of places. And I think it shows, at least it shows to me, how thin that left-wing swing in Latin America really was. There are a lot of very right-wing people in Latin America, especially amongst middle classes, but also at many levels of society. And I think people consistently underestimate the extent to which this is so. Obviously, this is the US's neighborhood. The US always has a lot of influence there. But these are societies in Latin America where there are a lot of right-wing people, and those left-wing governments, in the end, were not very successful and didn't put down very deep roots.
And also, I know this is an inconvenient truth to talk about, but it's very racially driven too. Okay, how many indigenous people in Latin America are gross right-wingers? I mean, not too many, okay? We're looking at the descendants of Europeans, okay? I pointed out on Facebook here, you have random guy, he's standing with his supporters. They're all remarkably European looking, okay? Just saying, all right? And you have, and I don't want to be the boring history professor here, but, if you look at Spanish and Portuguese colonization of the New World, it is very different from what primarily the British and the French did. See, the Portuguese and the Spanish intermarried with the indigenous population. All right, the French and the British, they essentially annihilated the indigenous population and did not intermarry with them. And so this is one of the, and then you have different experiences of slavery, because when you're intermarrying with them and then you have slavery, it creates a very kind of schizophrenic view of race relations, because if you can have children by them and be enslave them at the same time, are your children going to be enslaved? This is a big debate that was in Latin America as the anti-slavery movement succeeded, okay? And so that's why you have very different experiences here. And you still have Europeans that they say they don't want to intermingle. They want to maintain their Spanishness, their Portugueseness, their cultural heritage, because they look to Spain and Portugal as being their cultural referent and something that is superior, not what was created in these sovereign countries as the colonization of Latin America receded, okay? And they wanted the European settlers, they wanted to maintain control. And we've seen this tension all the way to the present.
Question from Zurus Alexander. Any chance of Russian active interference in Venezuela? Some informants report there are already Russian special ops operating as Maduro's bodyguards and security specialists.
No.
It depends what you mean. Okay.
Depends what you mean.
Yes, I mean that specific claim that there are Russian special ops in Venezuela has been categorically denied by the Russian government, and I'm sure that's right. I think the Russians will do what they can. They will speak to Maduro. They will give him advice. They will give him a certain amount of economic support, but not in ways that will overcommit Russia to a project that they can't really support economically without putting themselves at too much risk. And military support they're not going to give because they can't. I mean, you have to look at the map here. Venezuela is just too far away. It is not like Syria, which was close enough to Russia for Russia to intervene there, to be able to intervene there. Russia doesn't have the kind of military reach to interfere in Venezuela. And they are realistic enough to understand that this is the US's neighborhood and that there is only a limited amount that they can do. So they will give him advice. They will give him a certain amount of economic support. They will work hard in the diplomatic institutions, the international institutions, the United Nations, elsewhere, to keep as many countries as possible mobilized to oppose this regime change in another country, which the Russians are always opposed to, regime change everywhere. And in terms of those diplomatic initiatives, the Russians have actually achieved quite a lot outside a certain number of Latin American and European states. This Guaido thing that the Americans have concocted hasn't gained much international traction at all. But we need to be realistic about what the Russians can do.
And I'd like to point out that, again, where the legacy media falls down, because they're part of the problem here in this information war, is that Russia is sending humanitarian aid. It's sending food, from what I understand, maybe pharmaceuticals as well. It is doing this as we speak. The Red Cross is doing it. The United Nations is doing it. But but Bolton is, it's not getting through. It's not getting through. That's why we have to, up the ante. It is getting through, okay? Yeah. But from people that actually are sending real aid, not guns and munitions, like Abrams did. Okay, hats off to Congressman Omar. Why would we, speaking to Congress, to the committee that Abrams perjured himself in front of, she asked, why should we believe you now when you lied to us before? Excellent question. Kudos to her.
Peter, a question from Reckless Abandon. Any comment about the U.S. contractors expelled from Haiti for firearms offenses and staging fake protests saying, "Long live Putin"? That was an interesting story, actually. I actually read that story on RT.
I saw it in two different places. I don't want to comment because I don't know enough about it. I read the headlines in the first paragraph and I just went, okay, interesting.
That was an interesting story.
But Americans going into Haiti with arms, I don't think there's anything new about that. I mean, Haiti has been, its sovereignty has been so...
Another Clinton masterpiece.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's a playground. I mean, who knows what they do there? Okay. I mean, I had a really good friend that went there after the earthquake. A very good man. He's a liberal Democrat, but he was a very religious man, Catholic man. And he went there. Had been living in Russia, and he went there for 6 months, and he came back broken. He said, that is hell. The lack of any kind of human compassion it's unbelievable. He said it's something. He would tell me things, and I just would go, "You saw that? You lived through that?" And he said, "It is just and Western interference only makes it worse. So much worse.
Yeah.
Child prostitution rings, organ harvesting. I mean." Anything you could imagine is happening there. Okay, so a few Americans were caught carrying a few guns. That's the least of their problems in Haiti.
Yeah. Can I just say, I read a really interesting article about this on Zero Hedge, this Haitian episode, which we've actually put a link to. Now, I mean, I don't know how accurate this is, but it seemed quite well sourced. And it seems that this whole thing may be linked in a way to the Venezuelan affair, in the sense that Haiti apparently received some years ago quite a lot of economic help from Venezuela at a time when the Venezuelan economy was strong. And it's now come under an awful lot of pressure from the US to back Guaido.
Oh, I think they have.
And
they have, haven't they?
Well,
I think the government has, yeah.
Exactly. But and these protests, which we have seen in Haiti, are somehow connected to this. And the appearance of these American mercenaries in Haiti was also in some way connected to this. And there's been suggestions that some of those pro-Putin posters that we saw were actually provocations, and that they weren't really, we shouldn't assume that there was any reality to them. It's a very confusing story. There's a dearth of good reporting about it. All I can say about it is it looks interesting, but without more access to accurate information on the ground, I can't really say too much. Peter is absolutely right about what he says about Haiti. It is a destroyed place. I mean, it is awful, the situation there, and has been for as long as I can remember. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And it didn't stop the Clintons from going in there and pillaging the place during the earthquake.
Indeed, sir. It produces some good things, by the way. It produces a superb rum, of which I have some examples, and it's enormously cultured, and it has there's a lot of literature and painting and all kinds of things that people could do. So I mean, it's not by any means lacking in talent and good human resources, but it has never been able to put them to effective use.
All right, and Reckless Abandon, who asked that question, said CNN reported they were expelled, but no mention of their activities. Yeah. All right, Goberwala, the Duran, can you please talk about the election fraud in North Carolina? Now there's a rerun. Contrast this with the case of Rosa Maria Ortega in Texas, who got 8 years for voting with only a green card. I'm not following this story.
No,
I don't know if you guys have followed this story.
No, but I haven't been following this story, but I'm sure it's the Democrats. Okay, they're the ones that are always saying there's a purging of the what is it, the voting rolls.
Voting rolls, yeah.
Right, yeah. I mean, it's always them that are pushing this here. And it just very shortly, because I don't know all the details, but the Democrats don't know how to lose, okay? They remember during the debate, Donald, will you recognize the outcome of the election? Well, I don't know. I'll tell you then. Oh, unprecedented. No, but if you look at the 2016, 2018 elections, it's always the Democrats that never accept the outcome. It's racism. It's racism. It's always that. Okay. And then we had this outfit. What was it in Georgia that they were spinning this Russiagate conspiracy? It was the Russians that made sure that the Democrat didn't win. I mean, it all comes out, okay? So it's just the Democrats don't know how to lose with grace.
No.
Yeah. Colin Foster, Duran, any comments about the founder of eBay being outed as a bigger donor across World Trump spots than Soros? Pierre Omidovar, I know this actually. I know this. This guy does a really good job of covering up his tracks. He actually bankrolls, I believe, The Intercept. I don't know if he's still doing it.
I don't know.
But he does. Okay.
No,
but he did fund a lot of the activity in Ukraine, Peter. Actually, I do know.
Yeah,
this.
I think he had a falling out with Glenn Greenwald. Yeah. Because I think now he's Glenn Greenwald. God bless his soul, great guy. great journalist, okay? But I get the sense he's been kind of neutered over at The Intercept. I mean, he still is able to do what he wants to do, but I get the sense that he's been pulled out of the decision-making process, because The Intercept, as good as it is, sometimes runs some really horrific garbage bordering on propaganda. Okay, but what Glenn does, I think he's got basically a blank check. I'm sure he's not allowed to write about his boss, though.
Yeah, and Liam Hicks says Pierre Omidyar is worse than George Soros. Yeah, the guy really does a good job of funding a lot of regime change stuff, and he stays off the radar. I don't know how he does it, but he does stay off the radar.
What I think is strange is it seems very contradictory, his interests. Okay, there needs to be an in-depth report about what he does, because he seems to all over the political spectrum, the things he's interested in doing. There's not a whole lot of rhyme or reason, at least at this point, for me.
Yeah, there's not a lot of press about what he's doing.
I mean, he's an interesting man, but a point about Soros to remember about Soros is that he goes out of his way to draw attention to himself. I mean, he's constantly marketing himself as this big person. So it would not surprise me at all if there are other people who are more heavily implicated in all kinds of activities than Soros is. But Soros, as you know, he promotes this open society ideology that he talks about. He funds all these universities. He gives heaps and heaps of interviews. So it's not surprising that we tend to focus on him, and we don't perhaps see the other people who are doing this perhaps on a bigger scale.
You know, I had one of my producers years ago. She got involved. She was a Russian, and she got involved in one of these Soros programs. And basically, they give the young people, students, you get a round trip ticket to the U.S. You go to these seminars. It's all paid for, and she was in a group of Eastern Europeans and people from the Baltic republics, and she was relating this to me years later. She said, I figured the score on day one when we started the seminars. It was definitely anti-Russian, okay, anti-Russia. And what they wanted to do is they made sure that she was alone and with a whole group of people, and she understood later that it was not only the quote unquote instructors or teachers, but it was the group, that was all this group pressure on the one Russian girl to flip her, okay, to flip her against her own country and her own people. And why do they do it? Because they succeed very often, okay? Okay, that's why they do it. I mean, it really is indoctrination, okay? Because look, maybe these kids come from a small village, you know, and they've never seen the world. They get a free ticket. It's very prestigious. It's very, dangling nice shiny things in front of you, and the city lights and all that. And there are people that take it line, hooker, and sinker. And when they go back, they get in these NGOs that are funded by the West, you know, and they feel like they're doing a great cause. And they keep in touch with their network. That's a very important thing what they do. And a random guy, Guaido, he's part of this. He was part of that whole process.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a good point, Peter. Thank you, Ken Barnhouse, for your super chat. Thank you, Gus Linton, for your super chat. Borchty the Almighty. Peter, what's going on with the Rus-Japanese peace process?
Nothing. Because the Japanese, after making nice for over the years, basically said to Putin, we're going to do it our way. And Putin says, no, we'll compromise. And the Japanese said, no, we're going to do it our way. And then he said, no.
Right. Super chat from Chosi. Alexander, will the U.S. really go after Nicaragua and Cuba as well? Don't.
They are.
Yeah. And Chosi says, don't shit on your own doorstep comes to mind. We will be getting demonetized, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, Alexander, what about Nicaragua?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've said it publicly. I think, well, I can't remember if it was Pompeo or Bolton, or one of them at least, said definitely that they were going to go after Nicaragua and Cuba. I think Nicaragua is very vulnerable. I think Cuba, for many reasons, is much less so. Partly because of the nature of the political and economic system in Cuba, and the fact that it survived for such a long time, and that the government there has now developed pretty strong defenses and has a very much stronger international position. But I don't think that Nicaragua, I don't think there's any doubt that that's the agenda. Whether it will succeed or not, I don't know. I would have thought that at the moment, their hands are full with Venezuela, which where the situation is completely unresolved.
I think that but I think at the same time, Nicaragua has learned a lot of lessons about American meddling, and I think that they're probably far more prepared than Elliot Abrams would like. But then, of course, Elliot would say, "This is a challenge. This is an opportunity." Okay, that's how this guy thinks. He's really scary. He's a really scary guy. Because he has no scruples whatsoever. None. Zero.
None. I mean, I think I should just say that, of course, doing all this kind of destabilization in a volatile region with vast amounts of crime and lots of people with guns has the potential to really to really start an explosion. Yep. I mean, Colombia, for example, which is now being used as a launch pad for some of these destabilization attempts on Venezuela, has just come out of a civil war with many of the problems that started that civil war unresolved. And many, many people still in Colombia with guns and ready to do things.
Plenty of
guns. So as I said, starting wars, you just don't know where it can stop. And we saw that in the Middle East, where, you destabilize one country, you destabilize all sorts of others, and you can set all kinds of terrible things in train. If the US isn't very careful, I can easily see how this whole thing could run out of control.
Oh yeah, and there's no wall. There's no wall.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the point, to make it run out of control, to set Latin America on fire. That's the whole point of it. Love South France says, get Elliot on your show.
I'd love it.
That would be something.
Yeah, I'd love it. Can you imagine the questions Peter would ask?
All right, we have a question from V.A. Snellin. Let's go to France now. I have one question, if you please. We all know that France has a rather large Muslim population. How do they stand, and are they taking part in the Yellow Vest activities?
To the extent that I've been able to follow the Yellow Vests, I gather that it is essentially a middle class, rural, small town French phenomenon. In other words, that it's not something that has involved France's Muslim community to any very great extent. But I want to make it very, very clear that some of the attempts which have been made to try and paint the Yellow Vest movement as some kind of nativist movement are wrong. It is a patriotic French movement, perhaps, in fact, overwhelmingly made up of French people, but I don't see it as being anti-Muslim or anti-Semitic or those sort of things. It is for France. And I think we should understand it in those terms. Muslim people in France have many grievances. There's been many problems of assimilation with that community. It's been some members of it, unfortunately, have been drawn into Islamist terrorism, as we all know. But as I said, I don't get the sense that they are involved directly in these protests.
Yeah, but I would just say, having said that and agreeing, I wouldn't be surprised if there were, because there's some people saying that they do believe part of their identity is being French, and they're suffering. So I wouldn't be surprised if some absolutely were involved in that, because the issues that are affecting the people that Alexander Mercouris just described are affecting some Muslims as well. So that's why I really like to avoid those kind of things, because I don't look at the identity of people that have grievances. In this case, I look at all of the people that have grievances. Okay.
Yes.
And I think that's a proper way of looking at it. Okay. Because this is what the British media does, the conservative media, legacy media does in France. This is their plan. Oh, it's anti-Semitism. Oh, they're against Muslims. See, this is what they do. This is what they do. This is identity politics in action. Okay.
Well, this is exactly right, Peter. I mean, if you're looking at the British media, there's already been several articles that have been trying to argue that the Yellow Vests movement is anti-Semitic.
Oh, God. What is wrong with your country? That's every time I go to Zero Hedge, it's anti-Semitism in Britain. I mean, from what I can tell, there's very little, okay? There's very little anti-Semitism, hardly any.
Very little indeed. And to the extent that we have anti-Semites here, they're a very despised and marginal minority. But as you correctly say, Peter, it's on the establishment's brain. I mean,
I grew up in America. Okay, I grew up in the Midwest, and then I went to. Unfortunately, I lived in California for 10 years. Okay, I never came across an overt racist, ever.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've asked people on Facebook, you know, what happened? Is there a Nazi under every single rock around every single corner? Oh, this little Smollett guy, I guess, you know, he was a magnet for them. Oh, but he lied, a hoax about it. Okay, that's all. You know, anytime I watch CNN and MSNBC, which is very little, I only do watch it for my work. That's all they talk about. That's all they talk. Is that what's really happening in the United States? I tend to doubt it. Okay, actually, I'll say it and maybe surprise people. American people are very nice people for the most part, and they are generous for the most part. But more and more of them are tired of being taken advantage of. Okay, and people they're being taken advantage of to promote the lifestyles and values of the elites that actually despise Middle America. All of the Oscars, which we won't talk about.
Yeah, we're not going to get into the Oscars. We have a question from Ballroom of Mars. What might stem from Italian PM Salvini's recent statement on sending mercenaries to cut down the heads of state in France? Did Salvini make those comments?
Well, I haven't seen them. I mean, there's lots of stories circulating about Salvini. It sounds to me. I mean, he's
a cottage industry.
I mean, he does say wild things from time to time, and we shouldn't take them all very seriously. But all I'm saying is, unless I'm sure that he said it, I'd be careful. I mean, there's lots of stories circulating about him. A recent one, by way of example, was that he had a secret meeting in Russia with Russia's deputy minister, Mr. Kozak, in which supposedly Salvini asked Kozak to arrange for Russian government money to be provided to the Northern League, in other words, to Salvini's party. Now, that story was complete nonsense.
Russia would never do that.
No. Well, I mean, Kozak has come and said he's never met Salvini. He knows nothing about Salvini. They've never had any kind of contact. So the whole thing is a fantasy. But it's clear to me that Salvini, entirely predictably, is the target now of an information campaign. I mean, it's inevitable. So I'm afraid, unless I actually see this kind of comment confirmed, I am going to be very skeptical that he said that. And yes, he does say some very wild things. I think that's a bit too wild, even for him, actually, but a lot too wild. I just can't really believe that he would have said something like that.
You know, it really falls in the same category here as Julian Assange is in bed with the Russians. The Russians would never, they would always keep someone like Julian Assange at arm's length, okay? But if you read the British and the American media, Julian Assange in colluding with the Russians at WikiLeaks, you know, there is not one shred of evidence of that, though it is repeated all the time. And again, Alexander Mercouris is right. We have this Italian political figure that is now being the focus of a disinformation campaign. Happens all the time. Look at Jeremy Corbyn. He's been having to deal with this. I mean, the British government spending taxpayer money and this integrity initiative attacking the head of the opposition. I mean, talk about political corruption. I mean, that is such a fantastic story that the average British citizen and voter has never heard of it.
Oh, it's almost entirely unreported here.
Yeah, oh yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you go through the British media, I think there's been a couple of stories, and they've just basically downplayed those stories that have reported it have downplayed it.
It's a huge story, And I want people to. I want to back up my words here. I'll go to the Moon of Alabama. They have I think a 3-4 part series on it. I mean, all these emails are being released and revealed, and it's really interesting. Some of the people that are involved in this actually have gone public and say, "Yeah, but we're on the right side of history, so it's okay." Okay, while the same people that are involved in it accuse me and us of being propagandists. Okay, but they actually colluding in a concerted effort to get to academics, get to CEOs, get to civil society people and infiltrate them, and to basically write talking points for them and to repeat it. That's their strategy is the echo chamber, to say it over, collusion, Trump, Russia, Corbyn, anti-Semitism. Just keep saying it over and over again until people think it's normal.
Well, it works, Peter. I mean, now
yeah, it works.
In the United States or in the UK, it's now taken as fact that Russia meddled in the elections.
Yes.
I mean, people say it, it's fact. It's taken as fact that Assad gassed his people. I mean, whether you're going on MSNBC or Fox News. I mean, I was watching that View show with Tulsi Gabbard and Meghan McCain, said, as fact, it is fact, Tulsi, that Assad gassed his people. That's fact.
No,
so, I mean, it works. It works. Propaganda works.
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Calm down, Alex. Calm down. I usually do that, not you.
All right. Okay. Let's get to a different type of question. From Zudus, question: Belarusian business as usual with Ukraine. Recent reports say that Belarus sells anti-tank missile launchers and guided missiles for T-64BM tanks, which are later used in Donbass. Do you guys know of this story? Is it true?
I haven't heard this story, and I don't know if it's true, but I have to also say it wouldn't completely surprise me. Belarus, or rather President Lukashenko, has been very careful to try to maintain some kind of connection with the Ukrainian government. I mean, he always does this. He's always trying to keep his distance to the extent that he can from the Russians, in order to try and promote some kind of, his own independent position in some form. I think on our previous live, Peter discussed him, I thought, really well. This is somebody who back in the 90s, as Peter said, had ambitions to become president of Russia. It didn't happen because Vladimir Putin appeared instead. And ever since then, he sort of tweaked the Russian bear to the extent that he can. He refused, for example, to recognize the independence of South Ossetia and Abkhazia when he said he would. And he does these sort of things to tell the Europeans and the Americans and some people in Belarus itself and the Russians that, he's independent of Russia. And he also tells the Russians, well, give me all the oil and gas I need and keep all my markets open.
Cheap price, yeah.
Yeah, because, you can't take me for granted. So this is the sort of game he plays. So I don't know about the truth of this story, but if it is true, it wouldn't surprise me.
All I can say about it is that I don't know any facts about this, but my gut tells me it smells the high heaven of corruption. That's what it sounds like to me. Because are the Ukrainians getting this money from the Americans? Oh, when you give money to the Ukrainian government, that was your first mistake, okay? Because it's like a swooshing sound. It just disappears into somebody's pocket, and then they'll have some kind of receipts. Oh, but we bought this. Okay, it's somewhere, close to the Donbass, and even if it did, they'd probably sell it to the Donbass. Okay, Ukrainian military units are notorious in selling their own equipment to the people of the Donbass, and then they go home with money in their pocket. Okay, corruption.
Peter's absolutely right. I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, the Ukrainians could very well be buying and selling this equipment to themselves and telling the Americans that it came from Belarus. So we've got to keep that possibility very much in mind. And of course, in a recent program that I think is which has just appeared, we pointed out that in fact, the Ukrainians appear to be buying coal from the Donbass and telling everybody, well, it's coming actually from Belarus, so which doesn't have coal apparently. So I mean, it's entirely possible that what Peter says is also right.
All right,
You know,
yeah,
when
Peter.
I worked in investment banking, and you always remember
Mm.
the overriding #1 rule that you think about every single day is that greed is more powerful than fear. Okay, and that is operative in Ukraine.
Yes.
Yes, it is. From Frederick R. at the Duran to Alexander Mercouris. Do you think that the constant claims of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party are starting to lose its effect? The boy crying wolf fashion, I guess, in relations to Jeremy Corbyn.
Right. I think you've got to ask the question about on whom has it had effect. If you're talking about the general British population, the British electorate, the people who vote Labour, I don't think it's actually ever had much effect with them. If you're talking about the British political class and the Labour Party itself, the answer is it's had a great deal of effect. It's been very distracting for Jeremy Corbyn, who has to spend continuous time defending himself from this allegation, even though it's been discredited time and time and time again. And of course, it is constantly destabilizing, because it means that you've got people like Tom Watson, the deputy leader of the Labour Party, who isn't a friend of Corbyn, who's given in this way an argument to criticize Corbyn over by implying that Corbyn isn't somehow able to get a grip on this anti-Semitism thing. So I think it is effective, and I think we have to be clear that it is. I don't think it's effective in, as I said, winning votes away from Corbyn, but it is distracting and it is destabilizing, and that's its purpose.
You know, I don't think it's a coincidence that you have the lame duck president Macron in France saying he's going to back a law equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism. My God, we already went through that in the 1980s in the U.S. I'm not surprised the same thing is going on inside of Britain. If you're critical of Israel, you're an anti-Semite. Well, there's no logic to that argument whatsoever. And little boy Marco Rubio, again, hate to bring up that guy's name, he's pushing the same thing in the U.S. Okay, equating, promoting any kind of boycott and sanctions against Israel's anti-Semitism. It's all going on in those 3 countries that I just mentioned simultaneously.
Yeah. A follow-up to that, Alexander, any thoughts on Jacob Rees-Mogg running for prime minister in the UK? I've seen a couple of his speeches and think he would make a fantastic PM. That's from Jack.
I'm more skeptical about Jacob Rees-Mogg's abilities, but let's put that aside. I would have said a few months ago that the prospects of him becoming Conservative leader or prime minister were very poor. I have to say that the direction of events is making what I thought wildly improbable a little less unlikely now. Partly it's because there aren't, frankly, many convincing pro-Brexit leaders, even within the Conservative Party. But also, I think that the activities of the anti-Brexit minority within the Conservative Party have been so, how can I put it, arrogant, that it is completely unsurprising if pro-Brexit opinion within the Conservative Party, which is, to be clear, the majority opinion within the Conservative Party, is starting to drift behind the political leader within the Conservative Party, who is clearest in wanting Brexit and even a no-deal Brexit, who is Jacob Rees-Mogg. So I'm not predicting it's going to happen. I still think it's unlikely. I'm not convinced by him. I'm not convinced that he's a great person, that some people think he is. But are you asking me, is he going to be prime minister? A little more likely than I thought a few months ago.
I'm curious about him because he has, I don't know if it's his intention, or people that follow him and like him, but he has a huge YouTube presence, unlike anyone else in British politics. And I like watching him because I'm curious about him.
Yeah.
He's a smooth guy. He's a smooth talker. But that's the first warning, right? That's the first warning. He's a smooth talker, okay? Alexander McCarris, does he have a lot of substance?
Can I ask a follow up to that, Peter? Because from Tweety Bird, from one of our viewers, also says Rees-Mogg is not tough enough to carry that sort of burden.
Well, so, he's very effeminate, and I'm not. That's not a criticism. It's just an observation. Okay, he doesn't seem like a tough guy, but he is eloquent like very few people are. Alexander Mercouris.
Well, I mean, he's got the enormous benefits of a very expensive education. He is a highly intelligent man, no question about it. And I've said this before, he's also very rich. And I mean, his net worth, there's lots of discussions about how much he's worth, but it could be up to 150 million pounds. And that gives him enormous self-confidence. I mean, it's not something one should discount. But just like you, I am very skeptical that ultimately he has that weight, that political authority to carry the Conservative Party and the country with him. I've got to say this. One of the things about Jacob Rees-Mogg is that I would have expected him by now to really push for some kind of ministerial post or political post or something of that kind. He has consistently kept himself to the backbenches. And that seems to me to suggest someone who is nervous of being found out if he were to be given a position of
well, he doesn't want a track record that he has to defend.
Exactly.
That's pretty obvious.
Exactly. I mean, that you put your finger on it, Peter.
All right, from Brian says, just seeing Tommy Robinson's expose of the BBC, the Panodrama. Guys, this is a lot of people are talking about this. Alexander, do you have some comments? We're going to do a video on this.
Yeah, we are absolutely. Do you
have a preview, Alexander? Your thoughts on what's going on with Tommy Robinson?
I mean, it is quite clear that there is the Panorama is doing. That's the BBC are using the Panorama to do a big hit job on him, and it is also quite
a big hit job. A big hit job
on Tommy Robinson. No question about it. I mean, it's coming. We're all waiting to see what it's going to say, and the BBC has played this extraordinary game of, appearing to talk it up and then talking it down and avoiding it. What is beyond question is that the BBC reporter who has been carrying out this investigation, I use the words, I'm putting the word in inverted commas, of Tommy Robinson, has said some wildly inappropriate things which he has been obliged to apologize for, and which the BBC has admitted were wildly inappropriate. But as I said, they're clamping down on it. And I think that we're going to be doing a program on this very soon. And I would advise everybody to watch it.
Well, the thing, I look at the optics of all of this, and I've made it very, very clear. I don't call myself a big fan of Tommy Robinson. I defend his freedom of speech. That for me is very, very important. Because you take out Alex Jones, which I'm not a big fan of, Tommy Robinson, I'm not a really big fan of. But what they're trying to convince us to start putting narrowing what is acceptable speech, okay? And that's why I think Tommy Robinson is important, okay? He says things that I find I'm completely offended by. But I'm offended by just about everything these days, but I keep my voice out there in the public square. So what the BBC is doing is actually counterproductive. Because what it's going to do is that people are going to see that, okay, I don't really like what he just said, or I don't like some of the things he does, but you're denying him his rights, and when are you going to do it to me? And it's going to boomerang against the BBC, as it often does against the BBC, because it has a highly politicized, biased agenda. So what they're doing is they're giving him, I had him on my program once, and I had a big debate, and I said, look, Tommy Robinson is who he is, what he is, and he is part of the public discourse. I'm not going to pretend he's not there, because he is there. When I went during the World Cup, I met all these Brits, and I'll tell you, a lot of them were big fans of Tommy Robinson. I found that really interesting. And unlike now, when I was talking to them, I kept my mouth shut and listened to what they said and why they liked him, okay? So I don't want to, they want to turn him into some kind of cartoon, a caricature. I think that's a big mistake, okay? He's a complex person talking about complex problems. I don't always agree with his solutions. Go ahead, Alexander.
Well, Peter, I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. And first of all, I mean, the idea of the BBC carrying out investigations is in itself, to my mind, frankly sinister. I mean, who is this man? I mean, he is perfectly entitled to say the things he says, provided he acts within the law. But he has been, jailed on a contempt of court charge, which should never have been brought against him.
So specious, yeah.
I mean, we discussed this at the time. He's gained some traction with the British public, and I think, as I said, to try and crush him in the way that is being done, it is provoking a reaction. And there has already been a demonstration outside the BBC, with bringing thousands of people protesting against this BBC program and about the way it's been conducted and about the attitudes of the BBC, over the course of which Tommy Robinson showed his film. So to me, it is wholly counterproductive and it is wholly wrong.
All right, we have a super chat from Leon Rubles 400. What is your quick take on Calvi's arrest and how it affects the investment climate in Russia? Thank you guys for your great live show, which I enjoy watching. Calves.
Calvert. It's the Vostok Barry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Well, how does it affect the investment climate in Russia?
I don't think very much, because it's not a very active foreign investment market right now. Okay. Yeah. I don't know the details of that. Let me just tell you guys this. Okay. I left my satchel in the Dixie store that I mentioned so often, and I left it there because of this damn phone. And by the time I realized I'd left my bag, it was gone. And one of my girlfriends, she went to the shop and she got the videotape. And they found the videotape of a woman stealing it. And they called in the police. The police did an investigation. I'm talking about a leather bag and an iPad. And then I was called and I had to go through all of this paperwork. I mean, a lot of paperwork. I mean, it wasn't electronic. It was like sign here, sign here, sign here. It was many hours over a leather bag and an iPad. Why am I mentioning this? If they have a case against this guy, they've got a case against this guy. The Russian the judicial system, the criminal justice system, it's very, very meticulous. Everyone thinks it's, because of Hollywood, it's a telephone justice thing. No, it's not. I mean, very high ministers over the last few years have been taken down, and their trials last a long time because they go through all of these documents, and the judge has to read all. I mean, it's like reading War and Peace. Okay, it's so I would give credence that there's probably something here. Okay, but I'm not going to make a rush to judgment. But they wouldn't go through all this just for no reason. I did my own personal experience in dealing with bureaucracy in this country for 20 plus years. The political motivation thing doesn't cut a lot of mustard with me.
No, exactly. Can I just repeat, endorse all the things that Peter said? Now, Calvert, he has been charged. We must give him the benefit of the presumption of innocence. He hasn't yet been convicted of anything, but I am extremely concerned yet again how when a Western businessman in Russia gets into trouble, all sorts of people, including some people I know, take it as axiomatic that the businessman is in the right and the Russian authorities are in the wrong. I don't know that that is so. And all I am saying is, just as Peter is saying, let us wait and see what the case against him is and what the evidence is, because we don't yet know. So that's the first thing to say. I too, by the way, agree with Peter. I cannot see any conceivable reason why this should not be an investigation carried out in good faith. Now, as to the effect on the business climate, just as Peter said, it's not going to have any effect on the business climate because foreign investment in Russia is not very great at the moment. I think the Russians have given up any expectation that there's going to be a huge rush of foreign investment in Russia. 10 years ago, they were doing everything they could to try to attract it. I think they now realize it's not going to come. And I think they've been developing their economy in such a way that the investment will come, but it will be Russian. So they're building up their financial system, they're building up savings. They've just published a huge program of public investment in infrastructure. That is where the investment is going to come. It's not going to come from foreign investors, and we have to be realistic about this.
All right, S. Bennett, Alex, please tell us how to do super chats. Just click on that $sign underneath the chat. Take out your credit card or your Google Pay and send us a super chat, and we will answer all super chats or read.
Hey,
the super
and
chat
considering all this demonetization nonsense, we could discuss barter in the future. Okay.
Yeah, this video had a lot of a good amount of curse words, and we're talking about a lot of topics that there's no doubt we will get demonetized for this video. So your super chats, Duran t-shirt, PayPal, Patreon, that really helps us out a lot. And we have a super chat from Osama Kassem, the same BBC that portrayed the white helmets as heroes, ignoring all the evidence that proves otherwise. That is true. Talking about the Oscars, Peter, it was the white helmets that did get an Oscar as well. And George Clooney at one point in time was bankrolling a film about the white helmets. So as we said before, propaganda works.
I don't know if it was Clooney and his wife. Apparently, he's heavily influenced by his wife because I think she's Syrian. I'm not sure.
From Lebanon.
Lebanon. Yeah. Well, and he was very vocal about Trump's racism and the border and all that. Apparently, he moved out of one of his properties because there were too many illegal immigrants wandering around. Okay, and there's another person. Hollywood never has any kind of moral fiber. Okay, it's all white noise. I encourage you all to look up a book called the Benedict Option, and if you want to live your life with a wholesome life and live in a community where you can be part of and add to, and they can add to your life, the Benedict Option is something you may want to think about.
Okay, and from Gobarwala, could Alexander pine in about the jihadi bride, Shamina Begum, wanting to come home? Wanting to come home to Britain. Okay, Alexander.
Yeah,
oh my goodness.
I mean, this is a big story in Britain.
Yeah.
I should.
And in the U.S., I want to preface, they have the same thing going on in the U.S. with another ISIS bride wanting to come back home. She's supposedly from Alabama. And I just want to preface it real quick, Alexander. Her father was a diplomat when she was born in the U.S., and a lot of outlets are saying that she is an American citizen. I went through the same thing. My father was a diplomat. I was born in the U.S., and I just want to preface it. When you're born in the U.S. and your family is diplomat serving in that country, you do not have the right of citizenship. Green card and residency, yes, as a path toward citizenship. The right of citizenship from birth is not given to you when your family is a diplomatic family. So I think Pompeo and Trump are in the right there to not give her the citizenship. Alexander.
Yeah, I mean, I think with Shamima Begum, I think it's slightly different. And I think she does have the right, or rather had the right to British citizenship, which has been taken from her. But the point is, my own personal view is that if she's committed crimes, which apparently she has done, then the right thing to do is, in fact, to bring her to Britain and put her in prison after a proper trial. I mean, that seems to me the correct way to deal with people like this. And can I say we are now paying the price in Britain?
Well, yes, that's right.
The fact that we were so active in trying to overthrow the Assad government. And of course, if you live in London, you know, we have lots of mosques here. We have all sorts of Islamist preachers here. And I can remember very, very well all the, the calls for jihad that were being made against Syria and against the Assad government. And of course, now now these people are asking to come back, and we don't really know what to do. And it is a problem we have created for ourselves. As I said, my own personal view, as I said, is that the right place she belongs to is in prison if she's committed crimes, which she probably has. But let this be a lesson to our political leaders about the results of what happens if they go down this road. And if our leaders won't learn from it, which they probably won't, let it be a lesson to our people that perhaps we need to change our leaders and not let them do this kind of thing again.
I'm pretty sure, I don't know for a fact, but I'm pretty sure that if a jihadi came that had Russian citizenship came back to Russia, they would be the trial would be very simple, clear, and the person would serve a lot of time. Okay, exactly. And you don't want to spend time in a Russian prison. You don't. Okay.
Yeah. Probithoan's comment is just a simple word: blowback. Yeah. The law of unintended consequences, Peter. You say it all the time. Here you go once again. The law of unintended consequences. All right, and a question earlier in the chat, which was kind of interesting. What are the chances of the Donbass joining up with Russia?
Not anytime soon.
Yes. Yes, I agree. I don't think that is part of the anybody's strategy at the moment. So I too don't see it anytime soon. From the Russian point of view, and we're being coldly calculating about this, it suits Russia to have the Donbass republics in Ukraine at the moment, where they can exert pressure on Ukraine to prevent Ukraine going closer to NATO and the EU. And also, I don't think they want to pick up the massive bill that's supporting these Donbass republics.
The thing is that if Russia were to accept the Donbass, Donetsk and Lugansk, of course, there would be an international uproar, even though the U.S. and most of its Western allies in Europe illegally recognize Kosovo. Oh, but never mind. That's what they always do. Okay. No, but the thing is that then Ukraine would be able to do a sleight of hand, and that would be the open door to get into NATO. Open door, because they'll say, well, it's gone. We don't have a territorial dispute anymore with our neighbor Russia, because that's what's holding them back. And that's how, that's what, the Pompeos and the Boltons, they can't really square that, because do they want to change the rules of NATO? Because under the rules of NATO for entry, you cannot have territorial grievances with a neighbor. And if the Donbass were to go into Russia, which Russia doesn't want to pay for, let the people come. I mean, last number I got, 1.7 million have applied for some sort, walking papers in Russia. So they don't want that to happen. So this, unfortunately, is going to remain a frozen conflict. And it's a conflict where real people having real lives being destroyed here. But that was a decision of Victoria Nuland, Jeffrey Piat, and these people with obviously the agreement of Barack Obama and those absolutely gutless Europeans that signed a deal with Yanukovych, and the ink wasn't even dry, and they walked away from their own agreement. Shame on them. Shame on the EU, you spineless bastards.
People forget that. People forget that.
Spineless. Yeah. They don't forget it. It's
not reported.
It's not reported. It's suppressed.
It's suppressed. Yeah. The European Union, man, they
acquitted themselves badly.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that point, what you said, Peter, from Jerry Alatalo, is this crap ever going to end? You answered that about Ukraine, where we're going to see it for a long, long time. That's for sure. And from Frederick, I want to read a good objective biography of Putin that isn't tainted by liberal ideology. Any recommendations?
Let's do that next week, okay? Because I have a very good friend of mine, Chris Weafer, here. He's an Irishman. He's been living in Russia for a long time, and he sends out a quarterly newsletter of books to read on Russia, and he gives a good book review. So I'll look up the last one, and we can maybe put it at the link it below where it is. Okay, I don't want to give a recommendation because I don't really have a lot of time to read biographies right now. As a matter of fact, I might write my own of Putin. Okay.
Indeed.
Hint, hint.
Peter, hurry up and write it, because all I can say is I've not read a single one or seen a single one.
Let me. I'm going to say a jaw-dropping thing right now. Christina Freeland's book on corruption in Russia under Yeltsin is actually, what was it called? Not Comrade Corruption. Maybe that's what it was. Actually, it was a pretty good book when she was a journalist in the 1990s. Yeah. And since then, she's just gone completely on the loony side. But that's Comrade Criminal, that's what it's called. It was about the 1990s in Russia. It was a good book.
All right. And from D. Jones, one of the past shows, Peter mentioned how nobody asks socially related questions. So here's one. How much feminism is there in Greece, and how do gender relations in Greece compare to Russia and to the US?
Good question. Very, very good question. I mean, a very radical change in my lifetime. When I was a boy in Greece, I mean, it was still probably not wise for girls to appear to appear in trousers in public places. But I'd say that we have perhaps become much more equal in Greece than we were, but we are nowhere near the point of feminism that you see in Northern Europe or in the United States. So we are heading in that direction.
I'll disagree with you, Alexander, on that point. I will say that Greece is very much a matriarchal society.
Yeah, right. Okay.
And I would say that Greece at this point in time is, I would say maybe like 10, 15 years ago, I would say there was a pull between East and West with Greece. I would say now that Greece is fully in the Western Atlanticist camp, both politically, economically, and socially, with regard to this question, socially. And I would say that feminism has a very strong and powerful, if not a dominant hold on Greece. That would be my opinion on that. Right. Peter, what about Russia? And how would you compare feminism to the US?
Yeah.
There's no feminism here. We don't need it. Okay? We don't need it. No, I mean, if something works, why fix it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah. In the metro, you see these young kids, these millennials, they're aping their Western peers. I don't know if MTV exists anymore, but I mean, if it does, it's probably this garbage that's being spewed out. Look, for better or worse, the Soviet experience emancipated women way beyond anything in the West. Yeah. Anything. I mean, so what is to achieve? I mean, I don't think that if there was a female president of Russia, it would depend who she is.
No, it wouldn't make.
Okay, I don't think it would make a lot of difference. I mean, because if you look at, look at the universities, look at the medical profession, look at dentists. I mean, if it's not rough parity, it's more women than men. I remember when I was getting my eyes done. I was getting my eyes done. And I remember I was with Anya, my editor, and I jokingly said to her, we waited for like 25, 30 minutes. And, do any men work here?
Yeah.
I mean, and then in the world of business, Russia now has its first female billionaire. She used to be a teacher, has like 4 or 5 kids. Yeah. She's an entrepreneur. If you look at industry, state-owned and private, women are, if they're not at the top, they heavily populate in high management and middle management. So what do you need feminism for? Yeah. Okay, it's ridiculous. And on top of it, Russia has one of the most generous maternity leave programs of the world. So I mean, you can have your cake and eat it too. And Anya, my editor, she just went off on her maternity leave, and she is absolutely convinced, rest assured that anytime she wants to come back after her birth, her chair is there, her computer's there, and she gets right back to work. And she has that comfort to know that there's nothing to block that here. So we don't need any feminism here. It's ridiculous.
Alexander, from Drow 7, does the Donbass resent Russia for not ending?
Oh, yeah.
For not ending as part of, for not being in Russia, like Crimea?
Yeah, I've heard that a lot of people in Donbass are very angry with Russia because they feel that it didn't actually fulfill the promises which many of them feel Russia made in 2014. And I think a lot of people in Donbass thought that the Russians would come in militarily and would throw the Ukrainians out and would bring Donbass into Russia. And I think they're very angry with Russia because that didn't happen. But angry as they are with Russia,
they have no choice.
They're far more angry with Ukraine. Ukraine remains for them the enemy. And as I said, Russia is the country that they have to rely on and depend upon. So yes, anger is there, but as I said, reality also, as Peter said.
The irony of all this is, if we look at from 2014 to the present, and it was the Donbass is really the predicate, and Crimea obviously too, the predicate for the last major waves of sanctions. The interesting thing is that in Russia itself, not just the Donbass, there is a perception that Putin didn't do enough, which of course is very ironic, because in the West you have this narrative Putin was doing too much. So it's really interesting if you compare these two narratives from two different places. You come to very different conclusions. Look, particularly at the height of the conflict in the Donbass, I remember going to the newsroom at RT here in Moscow. And there were people that were very physically emotionally upset because they had relatives in the Donbass, you know, and it's the same ethnic group. I mean, most of these people speak Russian. Some of them speak Russian and Ukrainian. Some of them only speak Ukrainian. There are some that speak Ukrainian that identify as being Russian. There's some that speak Russian that identify being Ukraine. And this is the long argument I've had with people that, you know, Russia should have gone in there. And I said, if they had gone in there, they would be, depending on the locality, you know, 20, 30, over 50% would say they're under occupation. That's the dilemma there, okay? Because they would say, well, we don't want them here because I live in the Donbass, but I identify as Ukrainian and Ukrainian traditions. And that's the dilemma. I mean, people make it look like it's just all Russians, but it's not. It's a patchwork. That is the legacy of all of the borders of the former Soviet Union. And we still live with it today. The only country of the post-Soviet Union where the ethnic issue is been resolved or has no problems is Kazakhstan, which there are lots of Russians there, but they intermingle with the Kazakhs. And it's socially acceptable, okay? There's no tension there. But that is really the only exception. You know, we saw it with Georgia, you know, with South Ossetia, which they identify as Russian, or they're Ossetians that identify with Russia and Russian traditions. Of course, Gamsakhurdia, the radical nationalist that came to power at the end of the Soviet Union in Georgia, he was a Russophobe, okay? And he engaged in ethnic cleansing in Abkhazia as well, okay? But no one ever likes to talk about that. And the West has always used that as a cudgel to hurt Russia on all along its border. It can't do it in Kazakhstan. It's still doing it today.
All right, super chat from American Rebel. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for your super chat,
five
American
more
Rebel.
minutes. Okay, 5 more minutes. I got to get rid of the cross talk.
Alexander, okay, Peter's taking it. Alexander, do you want to continue it a little longer?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. All right, so let's I lost the question for Alexander. For Alexander, why doesn't the Ukraine just join the EU?
Well, because the EU doesn't want it. It's as simple as that. I mean, this has been the illusion, or if you like, the phony thing about the whole issue right from the start. Because Ukraine was led, or rather, people in Ukraine were given to think that the option
they were lied to
joining exactly the EU existed. It never did. It never has. I mean, the fact of the matter is the Europeans do not want Ukraine, which is an endless bucket in which they throw money. I mean, you know, with no flaw. And of course, they don't want, you know, millions of Ukrainians coming to Europe for work with the problems of migrant flows that there already are. So, I mean, it's never really been offered. It's never been offered. So that's why it's not happening. And the French and the Germans said it quite clearly.
Italians,
the Italians, exactly. So that's why it's not happened, and that's why it's not going to happen.
All right.
No. I mean, that was never the intention. Come on, look, you guys. I mean, the most important agricultural country in the EU is France. France doesn't want a competitor. No way. No way.
Yeah.
Okay. No. The thing is that go in. I mean, if you look at WikiLeaks, there are discussions with American officials, with Sergei Lavrov, and he made it very clear to these American diplomats, you know, if you try to flip Ukraine, you'll destroy the country, because it is a very, very fragile place. And we all learned that since 2014. And another thing is, too, I forgot to mention this because I think it's important. Let's say, hypothetically, Russia entertained the idea of bringing Lugansk and Donetsk into Russia. You have to look, going further west, how many other regions of the country will say, hey, maybe us too.
Yeah.
Okay? And it would create a demonstration effect.
Yes.
And let's say Lugansk and Donetsk go into Russia, and Kharkov, let's say they, you know, they got their act together, because they'll say, well, if they can do it, maybe we can do it. And then you go to the west of the country, that is where we have more of a Banderite ideology. They could say Kiev betrayed us, and we will become our own. And then you have the complete fracturalization of that entire country. And this is what the Russians warned back in 2008, 2009, that the entire country could dissolve. So if they hadn't had the illegal coup on the Maidan, Crimea would still be part of Ukraine.
Exactly.
Okay?
Yeah.
No one wants to take responsibility for their actions. It's only Russia's fault. Russia did not flip the regime in Kiev. The West did. And this is what we've gotten. And because Ukraine, in its current miserable state, it's being used as a cudgel against Russia. It has nothing to do with the fortunes of the Ukrainian people. We all remember those propaganda films that were paid for by the EU. I think it was the Dutch made some of them, you know, just showing how dirty you are now and how clean and nice and modern you'll be. It was really racist in a way, okay? Yeah. They made so many promises that they had no intention of keeping whatsoever. Oh, and by the way, Joe Biden's son becomes head of a Ukrainian energy company months after the after Maidan and the coup. Oh, I wonder if that's a coincidence. Come on, you guys.
Yeah, Hunter Biden. Alexander, we have a super chat. What are your views on the Kashmir attack in Pulwana? Who did it? Is Pakistan responsible? Will India and Pakistan go into nuclear war?
Well, I don't think they're going to go into nuclear war, but it's entirely possible, I'm sorry to say, that some people in Pakistan were involved. To those who haven't followed this story, I should say that there was a big car bomb explosion in Kashmir, which killed 40 members of the Indian security forces. So we're talking about a major terrorist incident in Kashmir, which is this disputed territory, of which part is within India, part is within Pakistan. The majority population is Muslim, but it is claimed, or was claimed, by both countries, and has been the source of a war between these two countries, between Pakistan and India in 1965, which incidentally was brought to an end as a result of Russian mediation, a fact which isn't widely remembered nowadays. But coming back to this particular incident, it is a violent incident in a region, in Kashmir, which has seen a lot of Islamist terrorism, and that Islamist terrorism has had a history of getting support from within Pakistan. And the leader of one of the parties, one of the major secessionist parties in Indian Kashmir, is actually based in Pakistan. So I'm afraid it's possible that some people in Pakistan were involved. In fact, it's highly likely, and within the government of Pakistan were involved. I do not believe that Imran Khan, the new Prime Minister of Pakistan, would have been involved in something like this. He has taken over Pakistan at a time when its economy is in very bad shape, and he has a secular reformist program. The very last thing he wants is a conflict with India at this time. And I think that the risk of this thing escalating into an all-out war at the moment, it doesn't exist. I don't think this is what's going to happen. But I mean, it's obviously a flashpoint. Kashmir is a flashpoint and will continue to be. And there is a real danger that it might escalate at some point in the future, but not now, I think.
All right. And Gobarwala says Kashmir was never part of India, Pakistan, or China.
Well,
It's disputed. Yes,
it's disputed. It's disputed. I mean, it was part. Let's put it like this: it was part of the British Raj, the British Indian Raj, and that is perhaps where the issues begin. Because Peter has been talking about how Russian borders were drawn up, internal borders within Russia were drawn up during the Soviet period. What happened in India, or in the Indian subcontinent, if you prefer, with independent countries or various countries being put together and played around with by the British, was done on a far greater scale and has caused endless problems ever since.
All right, and All Have Shadows says, I hope all Venezuelans remember the recent mess the U.S. started in Ukraine, and look how much it prospered.
Well,
that's a good comment.
Here, absolutely.
All right.
I mean,
yes, Peter.
I mean, this time it's going to be different. I mean, in finance, I said, the first rule is do I accept that, greed is more powerful than fear. And the second rule is never say this time it'll be different. Okay. This is coming from the financial world. This is good life advice, folks. Okay.
Yeah. From S. Bennett, British university students are being censored. Should they be?
In what way? I don't understand.
In what way exactly? I was going to say, I mean, we do have in Britain something of the same sort of policies that you see in the United States, where all kinds of people who try and make speeches in American universities were prevented from making them, and we have similar things in Britain.
Maybe more extreme, from what I understand, talking to Alexander.
Maybe even more extreme in Britain than in the United States in some ways. But I think that's such an open-ended question that if we can have a bit more precision from the question as to what he's referring to, I might be able to answer it a bit more clearly.
Well, certainly in the U.S., conservative groups are being deplatformed left and right. Yes, okay, I mean, speaking of which, I mean, I just take a look at one of Jordan Peterson. It was about Jordan Peterson. It was a talk show host. I think it was in New Zealand, and yet this wacko academic guy. It's all on YouTube. It's absolutely hysterical. But Peterson's a racist. He's a misogynist. And the guy said, "Well, what evidence do you have?" And it was absolutely hysterical. The guy was exasperated. He had no evidence to back up his claims whatsoever. And this is exactly being duplicated all through the Western world. Yes. Just because the way I look in my age, why do you assume my beliefs? Okay, because if I did that to you in the 1960s in the the southern part of America, they'd say you're a Jim Crow racist, and I would be. Okay, so I don't judge people by their outwardly appearance. Okay, but people like that, the left does it all of the time now. It's part of their game plan. Okay, well, they're promoting a form of racism right now, and I don't want to talk about the Oscars.
well, Peter, we just got a great super chat from S. Bennett, 200 pounds. Super chat. Thank you, S. Bennett. Wow. Total. And here's the comment. Totally agree, Peter.
Should I change my tie?
No. Totally agree, Peter. UK needed equal pay, but that's it. We have been happy with equality for 50 years. No need to reply. Please to donate. Thank you, S. Bennett, for your generous super chat.
In the UK and in the United States and in Canada, I will not say with great force about Europe, women do no longer face discrimination. I mean, come on, let's finally admit it, everyone, okay? Let's finally admit it, okay? They're not a victim group, okay? Okay, and this is what this equity argument is. Now, what are they doing now in the U.S.? Alexander can speak about it in the UK. Is that white women have to they have to be race traitors? I mean, what kind of language is coming out of this now? This is lunacy. It's absolute lunacy. Again, I had a woman on after the midterms in the U.S., and she was a Democratic spokesperson, and she said, "Oh, it's so wonderful. We have so much diversity, so much diversity." And I said, "But does all your diversity create any kind of unity? All you do is divide everyone, and we need unity." That's how we built our civilization, on the rule of law. That when I have an agreement with Alexander Mercouris, there is a modicum of understanding and agreement that we will keep our sides of the deal. Yeah. Okay, that's a remarkable event in human history, and they want to abrogate it all. They want to avoid it all. Yeah. Oh my God, this is insanity. Now we don't even trust each other anymore. We all assume ulterior motives now. and we're told to do that. You know, this is a form of politicide where they want us to destroy everything. But they don't offer anything in return. Nothing. They offer a void, meaninglessness, and a narcissism. That's what they offer, is a narcissism, and hate of anything that is different or you hear different from someone else. That's what they offer.
Alexander, you want to comment on that?
No, not really. I tend to agree
with the UK, with
the UK. I mean,
the outlook in the UK.
I'm going to say this. I think that, you know, perhaps with British diffidence, we're a little less aggressive about some of these things in Britain than they are in the US. But having said that, you know, go onto The Guardian and read some of the comments that you read from some of the people who write there. And they're pretty aggressive too. So there we go. I mean, it's. I have to say, if you go back to the Kavanaugh business in the United States, the Supreme Court case, where it was quite astonishing to me how some people in Britain took up the case against Kavanaugh, which I thought was completely wrong, with the same kind of frenzied arguments, frankly, that I saw in the US. So, if you like, the importation of American culture.
Yeah, but Alexander, I think my angst about this is, and I think Mark Stein, it does it really well, and you can see his videos on YouTube, is that, and I think I'm kind of directing this to Alexander Mercouris because we're essentially the same age here. Women should be part of public life. Women should be able to work. Women should be able to rise to their ability. I mean, we were brought up with that, okay? I mean, I certainly was in the US, and I never thought that was something weird. I thought, hey, well, that's cool. I mean, I didn't have any kind of resistance. But what I don't like now is that they expect me to compromise on everything. What they do is they move an inch and they kind of make you, don't worry, this is not extreme, you know, it's all for the better, it'll even be better for you. And then they keep moving the goalposts. They keep moving the goalposts until you are the oppressor and you have to basically, you know, off yourself, okay? Because you're the ultimate problem and you cannot do anything about it and we can't do anything about it, and you should be shut out of the public square because you are by definition oppression, and there's nothing, you're irredeemable. There's nothing we can do for yourself, and you can't do anything for yourself, okay? I mean, that is unacceptable for me, and that's why I push back now. I'm perfectly willing to say, hey, people should be able to rise to their potential irrespective of their gender, their color, and even sexual orientation.
Well, Peter, if I can just say, I once took a stand on behalf of a woman colleague who I thought was being treated less equally than me, disadvantageous.
Good on you. Good on you.
I mean, I put my job on the line on that one, and I'm a white man. And I'm not oppressing any woman, and I very, very much resent it when anybody suggests I am, simply because I am a white man. That's. I'm not going to say more. I'm not going to say more about it than that.
All right, let's wrap it up. Guys. Thank you, Peter, for staying on. Your comments were really, really well received. We appreciate Mr. Peter Lavelle. Thank you very much. Law is Truth, says Peter. Great Alistair Crook interview, by the way.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it was, he was coming into town. There's something called the Valdai discussion group here, and it is funded by the Russian state, and they bring foreign academics, and mostly academics and journalists. And they always have a special conference in Moscow on the greater Middle East. And Alistair, he's a Luddite. He's not into any kind of electronic communication. So his wife does everything. She's a wonderful, wonderful woman. And she said, we're coming to Moscow. I'm to give you a heads up. And I wrote back, I said, only me. No, if RT approaches, you say, Peter's going to interview Alistair. And it's exactly what happened. They had to say, because I got the heads up. And it's the third interview we've done together. And we've already talked about turning it into a number maybe even getting on Skype and turning it into a series here, and of course making it available to Duran, and maybe we could have a conversation with him also. Again, we're not going to show our hand here of our plans.
Peter.
I don't want to get my ass kicked after this. Okay, good thing I'm in Moscow. Okay, but I mean, this man, he's a big thinker. He's a really big thinker, and we had breakfast together for about 45 minutes before the taping, and my team showed up, and they were listening to us talk, and one of them said, "We should have filmed this." I mean, this is such great stuff. I mean, it's such an it's like intellectual nirvana, okay? Because we were talking about so many big things, and we could have spent hours on just one aspect of it. I think you saw that in the interview, is that I had to kind of contain it because it was just so many interesting things were being said. So I accept the compliment, because for me it was absolute thrill to interview him.
Search out that video if you haven't seen that video. Search it out. Alistair Crook, Peter Lavelle. You'll find it on YouTube. Valies, thanks guys. Terrific as always. Catherine, you guys were on fire tonight. Thank you very much. And we are wrapping it up with the final question. And we were talking about identity politics, missing people that have been oppressed. Blah, blah, blah. From Jerry, what has happened to the Skripals?
Oh, well, what has in the latest story is that Sergei Skripal is ill again. All very convenient not to produce him. One has to ask that question, and that's really the only question at the moment one should be asking about the Skripal case. It's what's happened to these two people. They have vanished.
I think I got it. You know, I don't be surprised. There's some Netflix producer out there saying, "Come on, I did this. This was a great drama. I want credit for it. Where's my Oscar? You know, come on." It's a whole wag the dog thing.
It's a good movie title name. Where are the Skripals?
Where are the Skripals?
Rosebud, thank you for your super chat. Thank you guys for all you do.
Desperately seeking, what was it, that film in the 80s?
Desperately Seeking Susan. Desperately Seeking the Skripals. Yeah, with it was with Madonna, actually.
Madonna, right.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate ending this on her name. Okay.
Yeah, but we will end it on her name. All right, guys, that was a great live. That was live number 27. Thank you, everybody, for participating. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your comments. Thank you for your support on the super chats. Peter Lavelle, what are you looking at this week? What do you have going on?
Venezuela and the summit in Vietnam.
Yeah, we did not talk about the summit in Vietnam.
We'll do it this week. We'll do it this week.
We'll do it this week, and I'm sure we'll do some videos on that as well. We have a lot of great videos coming up this week, guys. A lot of great videos. Alexander, what are you looking at this week?
Same as Peter on this occasion. I think Brexit is going to go into remission a little now over this week, thank God, because of Theresa May postponing it. So definitely the Vietnam summit and Venezuela.
And a lot of people are commenting on your haircut, Alexander. Nice haircut, everyone's saying. You look good. Did you get a haircut?
No, my wife does it for me.
I'm getting my haircut tomorrow. I want a compliment next time I come on. Okay.
All right, great. Okay,
actually,
guys,
I want to do a special. Maybe all three of us can do it again, because it's such an important thing. I really, I'm going to say something good about Donald Trump right now. I think his whole gambit with North Korea is spot on, and I'm going to tell you why later in the week.
All right, great. And that is going to be a big story.
That's a teaser.
That's a teaser. It's a big story that is going to be happening this week. And there's a lot of big stories that we will be reporting on, and we will have a lot of good videos coming out this week. Thank you, everybody. Guys, good job on shaving the beard, Alex. Thank you, Reckless Abandon. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. We hope you have a really good week. Have a good Monday wherever you are in the world. Thank you once again for tuning in. Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk in Moscow. Thank you, Peter, for staying on a little later than usual. We know you have to prepare for Crosstalk, and we really, really appreciate your input in the last 30 minutes. You were on fire the last 30 minutes. Thank you very much, Peter. And, of course, Alexander Mercouris, the Oracle of London. Thank you once again, Alexander, for all your comments and for everything that you do.
With apologies for delays in getting on. There's connectivity problems here.
No problem. As always, another great show from Alexander. Thank you very much. Pat Hacker, I prefer Alexander Mercouris in a hoodie.
Okay, we'll do a bird box edition. Okay, we'll all be blindfolded. Okay.
Yeah. Someone in the comments earlier actually said, "Nice suit, Alexander. We like the suit." So I guess everyone has different preferences for Alexander's attire. So we'll keep it at that. Thank you, everybody. Have a great night. Have a great day wherever you are.